The galaxy was changing. Systems that had once trembled under the power of the Council now whispered of courage, loyalty, and hope. Princess Liara, once abandoned by the galaxy's nobles, had become a symbol of unity, and standing beside her was Captain Elias Monroe, a human who had shown that courage and ingenuity could rival even the oldest powers in the universe. The final confrontation with the Council had taken place weeks ago. Their fleets had been scattered, and many noble leaders had either fled or reconsidered their allegiances. Yet the work was far from over. The galaxy still needed leadership, fairness, and guidance to prevent old rivalries from sparking new wars. Liara stood on the observation deck of the flagship, overlooking the planets of her newly organized coalition. Systems that had suffered for decades were now rebuilding, trade routes reopened, diplomacy flourished, and everywhere people spoke of the princess and the human who had dared to stand when others would not. Elias joined her quietly. "You've done it," he said softly. "You've shown the galaxy that leadership is earned through courage, not inherited through titles." Liara smiled, but there was a seriousness in her eyes. "We've done it together. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Elias shook his head. "I only helped you find what was already there. You've grown into a leader people respect, not because of your title, but because of your actions." The Resolute had become a symbol itself, a small, agile ship that represented the courage of humanity. Across the galaxy, humans were no longer seen as mere outsiders. They were allies, innovators, and heroes. And Elias, who had once been underestimated, now had a place of respect among the stars. Yet there were still challenges. Some nobles refused to accept the new order. Secret plots simmered in the shadows. Liara knew that vigilance was necessary, but for the first time she felt confident that their coalition could face whatever threats arose. A council of leaders was held on a neutral world. Representatives from hundreds of systems gathered to discuss the future. Liara stood at the center, her presence commanding attention not through fear but through respect. Elias stood beside her, ready to support, advise, and act if needed. "The Council's old ways are gone," Liara said, her voice strong and steady. "Power based on fear and birthright will no longer decide the fate of our galaxy. Leadership will be earned through courage, wisdom, and loyalty. Every system has a voice. Every being has a choice, and those who stand together will shape the future." The room was silent for a moment. Then applause began, spreading slowly at first and then filling the chamber. Aliens of all shapes and sizes stood, acknowledging a new era. Humans and aliens alike had learned a lesson. When courage rises above fear, and loyalty rises above selfishness, anything is possible. Elias felt a surge of pride, but he did not boast. He had always acted quietly, relying on actions rather than words. Seeing the impact of their work, the respect for Liara, the recognition of humans, the hope in the galaxy, was reward enough. As the council continued, plans were made to rebuild systems ravaged by conflict. Trade networks were repaired and new alliances formed. Education and communication flourished, connecting planets that had once been isolated. The galaxy was not just surviving, it was thriving. Liara walked with Elias along the observation deck, watching fleets move peacefully between stars. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what would have happened if you had not stood beside me that day?" Elias looked at her, thoughtful. Then someone else might have stepped up. But maybe not. Sometimes it only takes one person to inspire a movement. "I'm glad it was me. And I'm glad it was you," Liara smiled. The galaxy underestimated humans for too long. They thought courage, loyalty, and determination belonged only to ancient nobles, but they were wrong. "They are learning," Elias said. "And the more they see, the more they will understand that actions matter more than heritage." In the following weeks, Liara's leadership expanded. She visited systems personally, listening to grievances, solving disputes, and inspiring hope. Her reputation grew not because she demanded respect, but because she earned it. People saw her courage, her fairness, and her dedication, and they followed willingly. Meanwhile, Elias continued to demonstrate human ingenuity. Engineers and inventors across the galaxy sought his guidance, learning techniques that combined human creativity with alien technology. Small fleets became more effective, trade systems more efficient, and communication networks faster and more reliable. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, not through conquest but through courage, loyalty, and intellect. One evening, Liara and Elias stood together on the deck of the Resolute, watching a sunrise over a distant planet. Its twin suns bathed the surface in warm light, painting cities, forests, and oceans in shades of gold and crimson. "This is beautiful," Liara said. "It feels like a new beginning." Elias nodded. "It is, but beginnings are only meaningful if we protect them. We've started something important here. The galaxy will not forget the lesson it has learned." Liara turned to him. "Humans have changed the galaxy in ways no noble ever imagined. You have shown courage where others hesitated, loyalty where others abandoned, and intelligence where others relied on tradition. I am proud to stand beside you." Elias smiled. "And I am proud to stand beside you, not as a ruler, not as a princess, but as someone who fights for what is right. That is what matters most." Their conversation was interrupted by a communication from a distant system. A young leader, inspired by their actions, reported a potential conflict between neighboring planets. Liara and Elias quickly coordinated with their allies, preventing a small dispute from escalating into war. It was a reminder that even as peace spread, vigilance was still necessary. The galaxy was changing slowly but surely. Humans, once underestimated, were now recognized as brave and capable. Nobles, once dismissive and selfish, were forced to reconsider their actions. And Liara, once alone and betrayed, had become a symbol of hope and leadership. In the weeks that followed, new alliances formed between planets that had never cooperated. Trade routes flourished, education networks expanded, and cultural exchanges strengthened understanding among diverse species. Conflicts that would have once erupted into war were now resolved through diplomacy and strategy. Inspired by the courage and intelligence of Liara and Elias, one day, as they traveled to a planet on the outer rim, Liara turned to Elias. "Do you ever think the Council will return?" Elias shook his head. "Not in the way it was. The old Council relied on fear and status. That is gone. They may try to regain influence, but the galaxy has seen what courage and loyalty can do, and we will be ready if they attempt anything foolish." Liara smiled, her confidence unwavering. "Then we continue. We protect the peace we have created, and we inspire others to act with courage. That is our duty," Elias nodded, "and it will be done. Together." As the Resolute sailed past the stars, Elias and Liara looked forward, not backward. Their journey had been filled with danger, betrayal, and uncertainty, but it had also proven the strength of courage, loyalty, and ingenuity. The galaxy had learned that heroes could come from anywhere, even from a young human captain and an abandoned princess. The galaxy's nobles had once turned away. The Council had sought to control everything with fear, but humans had stood, and together with Liara, they had changed the course of history. And as systems across the stars celebrated newfound peace, as children learned that courage mattered more than status, and as leaders recognized the power of action over birthright, the galaxy entered a new era, an era where loyalty, courage, and wisdom guided civilizations. An era where humans, once outsiders, stood respected and honored, and an era where Princess Liara, standing beside her human ally, inspired a galaxy to believe that even in the darkest times, hope, courage, and unity could triumph. The Resolute continued its journey through the stars, carrying two figures who had proven that one human's courage, combined with a princess's determination, could change the galaxy forever. The galaxy had turned its eyes toward a new future, a future where bravery, loyalty, and action would always be remembered. And so, humanity had arrived not as conquerors but as heroes, and the galaxy would never forget it. The kingdom of Elindra was a land of splendor and mystery. Its towering castles pierced the clouds, rivers sparkled under the sun, and forests stretched endlessly beyond the horizon. Yet amid this beauty, a dark story clung to the palace like a shadow. No one dared speak it aloud in the streets, but every noble, merchant, and traveler knew. The princess of Elindra was cursed. Princess Ilara lived high in the tallest tower of the royal palace. Her beauty was unmatched. Her eyes shone like emeralds, and her hair rippled like the golden sunlight. Yet for all her grace and wisdom, no one dared approach her. For centuries, those who tried to court her vanished mysteriously. Some said they had fallen ill from strange poisons. Others claimed they were trapped in unseen shadows that swallowed them whole. The stories were whispered in fear, and the warnings spread like wildfire. Do not seek the cursed princess. or you will be lost forever. It was in this kingdom, under the weight of centuries of fear, that a human named Darien arrived. Humans were rare in Alindra, usually travelers or traders from distant worlds. Darien was no ordinary human. He had grown up exploring deserts, mountains, and cities far beyond his home planet. His eyes were always searching, always curious, and he had learned to trust his mind more than superstition. When he heard the tale of the cursed princess, unlike the locals, he did not feel fear. Instead, he felt a spark of intrigue. He had entered the kingdom disguised as a simple scholar, carrying with him books, tools, and devices unfamiliar to Alindrans. To the locals, he seemed an odd, clever man who asked too many questions. But Darien's true purpose was hidden. He wanted to meet the princess and understand the truth behind the centuries-old curse. The palace of Alindra was a fortress of beauty and intimidation. High walls carved from shining marble surrounded towers that reached above the clouds. Guards patrolled the gates day and night, and nobles whispered that the entire palace itself was enchanted. Darien, however, was not deterred. He moved through the city with quiet confidence, observing the patterns of the guards, the movements of servants, and the behavior of those who had once dared approach the princess. Every detail was a puzzle, and Darien loved puzzles. At night, he would sit by the river looking at the distant glow of the palace towers, imagining the princess inside. Stories told of her isolation, of the lonely nights she spent gazing at the stars, and Darien wondered what she thought when no one dared to speak to her. Unlike the frightened nobles who avoided her, he imagined the princess as someone who longed for understanding, someone waiting for a mind that could see beyond the fear. The next morning, Darien visited the local market. Merchants shouted, selling goods from all corners of Alindra and beyond. He overheard another version of the curse, exaggerated and terrifying. "They say the princess's gaze can turn men into shadows," one old merchant whispered. "Another says her voice is so powerful it can drive the bravest to madness." Darien smiled quietly to himself. Humans had faced dangers far stranger, and he trusted observation and reason more than rumors. Still, he knew caution was wise. The curse had survived centuries, and something powerful lay behind it. But unlike the locals, Darien did not see the curse as invincible. He saw it as a challenge, a riddle waiting for the right mind to solve. As he planned his approach, the palace gates opened to reveal a procession. Nobles dressed in their finest attire bowed to unseen royalty. Darien noticed the tension in their steps, the way they kept glancing nervously toward the highest tower. Fear lingered in every gesture. Many of these nobles had once dreamed of courting Princess Ilara, only to vanish into the shadows of legend. Others had returned changed, silent and pale, never speaking of what had happened. Darien approached a servant, a young woman with bright eyes and a cautious demeanor. "Tell me," he said, "what is the truth of the princess? Is she truly cursed, or do these stories hide something else?" The servant hesitated, glancing around as if the shadows themselves might be listening. "It is not safe to speak, sir," she whispered. "But she is lonely. Many have tried to court her, and many have disappeared. The palace is full of strange magic. Most think it is the princess, but perhaps it is the walls themselves. No one can say for certain." Darien nodded. That was all he needed. Even a hint of uncertainty meant there was a chance. And humans thrived on chance. Over the next few days, he observed the palace from a distance. He studied the guards' rotations, the pathways the nobles took, and the patterns of light and shadow that moved across the towers. At night, he traced hidden corridors and old forgotten walls that led toward the higher floors. Every step brought him closer, yet he never rushed. Darien had patience, a human trait that often outlasted fear. Finally, the day came when he decided to approach the princess directly. He entered the palace under the guise of delivering a rare manuscript from a distant land. The guards, cautious but curious, allowed him through. Darien's confidence and calm demeanor made them trust him. Few humans could carry themselves so quietly, yet command attention without arrogance. He was led to the moonlit garden, a place said to be touched by magic. Flowers glowed faintly under the silver light, and fountains whispered as though sharing secrets. And there, at the heart of the garden, was Princess Ilara. She was even more breathtaking than the tales described. Her eyes reflected the stars above, and her expression was a mixture of curiosity and caution. She held a book in her hands, as though the world beyond the garden did not exist. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. And why do you come here? I am Darian, he replied, bowing respectfully. I come from far away, from a land you have never seen. I have heard the stories, but I wish to know the truth. Not about curses, but about you. Alara's eyes narrowed slightly. Few had ever spoken to her like that, not asking about her beauty or title, but about her thoughts. She studied him carefully. Do you not fear the curse? She asked. Do you not know what happens to those who court me? Darian shook his head. Fear is easy. Understanding is harder. I wish to understand. For a long moment the princess considered him. The winds whispered through the garden, and even the flowers seemed to pause in anticipation. Finally Alara spoke. Very well, she said. But know this, many who came before you and vanished. You may find what you seek, or you may become another story. Darian smiled, not with arrogance, but with calm resolve. Then I will face it, whatever comes. That night, as the palace slept, Darian and Alara spoke for hours. He asked about her life, her thoughts, and the isolation she endured. She spoke of loneliness, of watching others fear her, and of the mysterious force that kept her trapped in the tower. Darian listened intently, not judging, not fearing. Humans had faced the unknown many times, and curiosity often triumphed over danger. By the time the first rays of dawn touched the palace, a fragile trust had formed. Alara no longer saw him as just another fool seeking her hand. She saw a mind capable of understanding, a courage that did not rely on strength alone. And Darian realized that the curse was not simply magic. It was centuries of fear and misunderstanding, woven into the very walls of Alindra. For the first time in centuries, someone dared to court the cursed princess, not with fear, but with courage. And the kingdom of Alindra, still sleeping, was about to witness a change unlike any it had ever known. The next morning, the palace of Alindra awoke in its usual mixture of splendor and tension. Guards patrolled the marble corridors. Noblewomen whispered behind golden screens, and servants hurried through endless hallways, carrying messages, food, and treasures. Yet amid all the noise and ceremony, something unusual stirred in the heart of the palace. A visitor who did not fear, and a princess who had not seen a genuine human curiosity for centuries. Darian moved through the corridors with quiet precision. He had spent the previous night planning his steps carefully. He had learned the palace's rhythms, which guards preferred the western towers when the servants made their rounds, and which halls were most heavily protected by magic. But more than that, he had learned patience. Humans, he knew, succeeded not by rushing into danger, but by understanding it. His destination was the high tower, where Princess Alara spent most of her time. From the outside it looked isolated, unreachable even for the palace residents. Stories said the curse created invisible barriers around her chambers, trapping her within her own home. But Darian, relying on observation and logic, noticed subtle clues, slight gaps in the magical wards, inconsistencies in the patterns of shadows, and faint sounds that suggested corridors hidden from ordinary eyes. When he reached the moonlit garden again, he was not surprised to find Alara there. She had chosen the same spot as the night before, as if the garden itself offered her some comfort against the world's fear. She was dressed in a simple gown, her hair flowing freely over her shoulders. In her hands, she held the same leather-bound book she had been reading. Her gaze lifted at Darian's approach, and for a moment she studied him silently, measuring his intentions. You have returned, she said, her voice calm yet wary. Most who speak to me once do not come back. What makes you different? Darian bowed respectfully. I do not claim to be different, he replied. I only wish to see the truth, not the stories. Humans often face dangers beyond imagination. Fear does not guide us, curiosity does. Alara's eyes narrowed slightly. She had heard similar words many times, but there was something in Darian's tone that seemed genuine. Curiosity is dangerous here, she said softly. The palace does not forgive mistakes. Those who seek me for love or greed or pride, they disappear. And even if they return, they are not the same. I understand, Darian said, but I wish to know you, not the curse. The princess studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she closed her book and set it aside. Very well, she said. But know this, the palace itself is alive in some ways. It can sense fear, desire, and arrogance. If you come here with anything but sincerity, the curse will not spare you. I have no desire for fame or wealth, Darian replied. I have only questions and a willingness to face answers. For the first time in centuries, Alara allowed herself a small smile. It was not a smile of relief, but of recognition, a human presence she could respect. "Come then," she said, "but follow my lead. The palace watches us more closely than you think." Together they walked through the garden and toward the tower. The moonlight revealed pathways hidden by vines and shadows. Ilara explained that the garden had long been enchanted to protect her, but also to keep others away. "The plants know who enters," she said. "They will not harm you if your heart is true, but they will warn me of any deception." Darian listened carefully, observing how the flowers swayed in patterns, how the shadows moved across the walls, and how even the air seemed alive. He was fascinated not only by the magic but also by the intelligence behind it. This was not a simple curse. It was a puzzle, waiting for the right mind to understand. When they reached the tower's entrance, a faint shimmer of light blocked the doorway. It was subtle but powerful, as though the air itself resisted passage. Ilara gestured toward it. "This is the first test," she said. "Most cannot see it. Those who feel fear here do not pass. If you truly wish to understand me, you must step forward." Darian nodded. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, breathing steadily. Fear had never guided him. Observation and logic did. He stepped forward, and the shimmer of light parted slightly, allowing him to enter. Ilara followed, her own steps careful but confident. Inside, the tower was filled with light and warmth, a stark contrast to the tales of gloom. The walls were lined with bookshelves containing volumes from distant lands, magical artifacts, and objects of science that seemed impossible in Alindra. Ilara led Darian to a window overlooking the city. "Most people never see this view," she said. "They are too afraid to approach. They see a curse and think it is impossible to look beyond it." Darian leaned forward, studying the city below. He noticed the patterns of life, the movements of people, and the subtle magic that infused the streets. "The curse does not lie in you," he said thoughtfully. "It lies in the fear that surrounds you." Ilara's eyes widened slightly. Few had spoken so plainly. "Perhaps," she said quietly. "But centuries of fear are not easily broken. Even the bravest falter." "Then we must find what bravery truly is," Darian replied. "Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it." Ilara considered this. She had spent years observing nobles, warriors, and mages, yet none had approached her like this. Darian's calm courage was not arrogance, it was understanding. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. They spent hours talking, sharing stories of distant lands and human ingenuity. Darian spoke of planets where people had survived deserts, storms, and machines beyond imagination. Ilara shared tales of Alindra's history, the rise and fall of kings, and the origin of the mysterious curse. She explained how those who had tried to court her often fell victim not to her, but to the enchanted defenses of the palace itself. The walls, the floors, even the air could turn against intruders driven by selfish desires. Darian listened carefully, asking questions that showed his genuine interest. He did not speak of her beauty, her wealth, or her title. He spoke of her thoughts, her fears, and her dreams. Ilara found herself opening up, sharing feelings she had hidden for centuries. She had not expected a human to be so perceptive, so willing to see beyond appearances. As the evening approached, the tower glowed with the soft light of sunset. Darian and Ilara moved to the library, where ancient books covered every surface. She showed him texts that recorded centuries of magic, experiments, and warnings about the curse. Together they examined diagrams, inscriptions, and magical symbols. Darian's mind worked like a human compass, finding patterns and noticing details overlooked by those who relied only on fear or brute strength. "Do you think the curse can be broken?" Ilara asked quietly, her gaze on a faded page. Darian considered this carefully. "Perhaps not broken by power alone," he said, "but understanding, courage, and careful action. These can unravel what centuries of fear have woven." Ilara looked at him, a mixture of hope and caution in her eyes. She had spent her life trapped by a story, by the whispers of a curse, and now she wondered if perhaps a human could see through it. She felt a strange sensation, a blend of excitement and apprehension. Could trust truly exist after centuries of isolation? "Very few have ever listened to me," she said softly. "And fewer still have understood what I am truly facing." "I am here to understand," Darian replied simply. "And if I can help, I will. Not for glory, not for reward, but because it is right to try." Ilara studied him, feeling the weight of centuries lift just a little. In the quiet of the library, surrounded by ancient knowledge and the fading light, a fragile bond began to form. The princess who had been feared by all and the human who had ignored warnings were no longer strangers. They were partners in a journey neither fully understood, yet both felt was important. Night fell over Alindra, and the palace lights shimmered like stars. For the first time in centuries, the cursed princess was not alone, and the human was not afraid. Outside, the kingdom slept, unaware that a story was beginning, one that could change everything. Darian left the tower that night with a sense of purpose. He had not yet solved the mystery nor broken the curse, but he had taken the first step. And sometimes, he thought, the first step was the most important of all. The palace, still ancient and filled with whispers, seemed to watch him leave. Somewhere deep within its walls, magic waited, observing the human who dared to ignore warnings. And for the first time, that magic sensed something different. Not fear, but courage.